I'd like to start the shiur this evening by thanking our wonderful Rabbi David Hammerman, sponsoring the shiur in memory of his beloved father, Louis Hammerman Elazar ben Baruch. All of us shalom, the Heilige Neshama Shevisacha, to a tremendous continuous aliyah and Neshama and Gan Eden Shamayla Mechayel Achayel Emet Hashem. I want to thank as well our dear Lori and Dr. Freddie Martin, also sponsoring in memory of her mother, Lihur Shalei Bas Moshe. Aryeh Aleh Shalom, the Heilige Neshama Shevisacha, tremendous continuous aliyah and Neshama and Gan Eden Shamayla Mechayel Achayel. I want to mention as well the yard sites of Rachel Bas Yosef HaKohen, Mordechai Ben Zelig, Rivka Bas Aaron, Aleim Shalom. The Heilige Neshama should all be zocha to a tremendous aliyah and Neshama and Gan Eden Shamayla Mechayel Achayel Emet Hashem. This week's parsha, we turn with Siyata D'Shmaya Parshas Va'era. We have the first of the Makos recorded in Parshas Va'era, the first 7, of course, broken up, 7 and 3. That itself needs a beer, something that warrants explanation that we've touched on in the past. The Shloh Kodesh Marech has many others. Why in the world do we break them up? 7 and 3, 7 in Va'era, 3 in Parshas Bo. If you're going to break them up in any fashion, why not break them up? As Rashi says, based on the Medrash, the first 5, Paro hardened his own heart. The last 5, the Yevish Torkilu intervened and took away his Bechira, famous Machlekes, Ramam Ramban, etc. So why not break it up 5 and 5? Why not break it up? And many Rishonim and Achronim all coming into the discussion of what exactly is the Hesper in the breakup to Tzachanash Bechav, but 7 and 3 that needs a beer. So let's with Siyata D'Shmaya touch upon just one Nakuda here this evening. Here we started with Makas Dam. Pashtus, as the Maral and others explain, we're going in ascending order in terms of severity, the harshness of the Makas. So we start with Makas Dam. From Dam to Tzvardei, Akinamor of Deber, Shechin, Barad, and now the last of the 7 that appear in the pages of this week's Parsha, Parshas Va'era, Makas Barad. So this has to be a biggie. This is the one that's going to close the Parsha. This is one that is so big that it was evident. Anything already after Makas Dever is so self-evident that the Yevishter Kaviyokla has to intervene to take away Paro's Bechira. That means it was so bolate, it was so begoloi, so glaring and blatant that Paro himself was ready to give in and say, okay, it's time to let him out, and the Yevishter Kilo interceded. That means we're dealing with a level of severity once we get beyond the Makas Dever, and we have Shechin. There was something so clear in Shechin that this was the Yevishter. After Shechin is certainly Barad and Mamela, we have what Moshe Rabbeinu says. Moshe Rabbeinu was told by HaKadosh Baruch Hu Vayom Hashem Moshe at the end of Eira, Hashkim Amokas Yatzavani Paro, and tell him Elohei Avrim Shalachas Mimi Avduni keep a Pamazos Ani Sholeches Kol Mage Fosai El Libcha Bavadechu V'Yamecha Bavor Teda, all in order so that you should know Kain Kamoni B'Chalaret. So this is Kol Mage Fosai Pshuto Shemikra. It's a reference to the Makkah that's about to come. The Hainu Makas Barad. Rashi does say it's komage fosai lamana mikan shamakas b'chayra shekula keneged kol hamakas. That really was a remez already in Makas B'choros. Again, Devek many before Rashi Makas B'kuros. It really is a reference to Makas Barad. The pastus of the psukim is that a reference, and that's how many before Rashi read into Rashi that it really is indeed a reference to Makas Barad, the one that's going to occupy the last of the 7 aliyahs in Parshas Va'era. So how do we begin the 7th aliyah? Odecham estola ba'ami levilti shalcham hineni mamtir ka'is macha borod kaved mo. Not stam hail, but a very severe and hailstorm. They've never seen anything like this in the world. This is going to be the biggie. This is mi bechina achas kol magi fosai. This is number 7. 7. We're talking about a shleimus. This is the one that closes the first set of 7 that appears in this week's parsha. This has to be a biggie. This is going to be bigger than everything and anything that preceded it. And it's going to be not stam a barad kovid. It's a barad kovid mode. And the Torah is madgish. There never was anything like it. So what happens? Oh, it's going to be a biggie, but what? Anyone who wants, you could take your cattle and take yourselves and go into the house, and you'll be fine. Hayori is davar Hashem, me'avdi paro. Heinous is savadus v'nei. Hashem says this is going to be a biggie. It's going to be a bar kabel, but don't worry. I'm giving you a way out. Pashtus, the Makkis until this point in time affected anyone and everyone. All of a sudden we get to a market where Nichlal already in the warning is, don't worry. I'm telling you, giving you guys a head up. If you go into the house and you bring the livestock, if you're ma'asifet habaisa, you don't have to worry, no one's gonna, not even damaged, don't worry, nothing's gonna happen. So Hayari is Tavar Hashem, what do? They bought the Vadov and Mikneo, they bought it onto the house. And then what happens? They got afflicted. Now writes the Briskerov. We read in the next passage. Perak Tes Pasach Habeis. Vayomer Hashem Moshe Netzayis Yodcha LaShamayim V'hi Bored B'chol Eretz Mitzrayim. So now it's time to materialize. The Makkah is now starting. So the Bored comes into Kol Eretz Mitzrayim. Where did it go? Allah Adam V'Ala Behema V'Akol Esav Hasana B'Eretz Mitzrayim. So what happens? It goes on to what? Onto the Adam, onto the Behema Kol Esav Hasana. Frek the Briskerov and the Kute Maran Hariz Maran Agriz Ala Taira. Zok the Briskerov L'Chayra. That's Miyusar. It's superfluous. If you just told me the board is going to be B'chol Eretz Mitzrayim, it's going to be everywhere. Hey, Barad B'chol Eretz Mitzrayim. If it's everywhere, then isn't it obvious that it includes Adam, it includes Behema, it includes Esav Hasana? Why would the Torah need to be Mefarei to spell it out that the board went on man, on animal, and on the Esav Hasana? And at the end of the day, it went everywhere. Zok the Briskerov Gevaldige Chiddush. Near me Loshen HaKosov. Ki abor lo yored rak b'mokum shahaya shom odam o behemo esav hasodeh. Dim lokain, if that wasn't the case, lama part on a kosev a lo pshita. Ksheborad yored akamashim. So when hailstorms come down, they come down all over the land of Egypt, and that's the pashtus from the psukim. Say yeshlomer dekach haysan nevuah. Dim yuba bias lo yered alayim abord v'lo yazikim v'rakal aisam asher yitzu b'asada v'lo yeyasva b'aisa alayim yored abord v'meisa v'lo mishum da bias hayashmir linyan abara rak to make kor lo yored alayim abord klaus. Dr. Briskerov, the chiddush of the Torah is, you might think the hailstorms went everywhere, the board was v'chlar tzrayim, but the Torah gave you a Pesach a way out. If you bring your avodim and your miknah, your cattle livestock into the house, then the rooftop, the house is going to shield you from the hailstorm. No. Zok the Briskerov, the chiddush of the Torah is, where was it? Al Adam, only on Adam. Only on the Adam that stayed outside the house. Only al Behema that stayed outside the house. And only al Esav Hasodeh. But anything that you brought into the house, it's not the shot that it was everywhere. But under the roof, it gave you a sense of safety and security, and it shielded you from the hailstorms. There was no Barad. That was good for the chiddush. There was no Barad if you took it into the house. Azai Zok the Briskerov, brisk. We're interested in the what. We don't yet know the why, but the Briskerov is telling us what? That the pashtus of the psukim, by being margish the tzarech to go out of its way and specify that the hailstorms only went on Adam, Behema, and Esav Hasana, means they didn't go on the housetops. They didn't affect the house. That's out of shot. Oh, an Egyptian says inside my house, oh, my house protected me. You know why you were protected? Because David just said there's not going to be any borah there. So what's shot? This is the only makkah out of all the makkahs. I'm giving you a heads up. I'm giving you a way that you won't be negatively, adversely affected one iota. And then comes the Briskerov. There's no chiddush built into the makkah. It's the only one. Shchin went everywhere. Never affected. This is one so specific that if you go into the house, there isn't going to be borah in the house. Again, it's a nes v'toch nes. Not only did you have the hailstorms, not only was it the mayim and eish, it was fire and water diametrically opposed to opposites that are able to coexist miraculously. You have an ace with toch nace, but yet there's this other aspect of the nace that's not even going to go ahead and affect you. Why not? Let people see it's everywhere. This is Makkah number 7. This is Koma Gefosai. This is a Barad Kaveh mode. What's up, shot? Let's add on another question at the end of the parsha, right before the Maftir. We're talking about how stark the Makkah is. And that's l'chayra, the recurring emphasis. We want to highlight how severe every one of the preceding plagues was. This is the only one out of all Esar Makkahs where the Torah goes out of its way to tell you what. You should know. Ha'pishta v'asor nukasa, ki asora v'apishta givo, but v'achita v'akusemes lo nuku, ki afilo seina. They're soft, they didn't get affected. We're telling you about a Barad Kaveh mode. We're telling you there was never any hailstorm like this in this history. And now as a closing, departing message, you should know the Barad, it didn't really get everything. At the end of the day, it didn't get the chita kusemes, it didn't get everything. What's going on? Let it get everything. Destroy everything in sight. What's going on? Feiner 90. One idea perhaps is as follows. This is the first makkah that's intertwined with the weather system. With what? With Gevurah Geshamim. Kayadu, we have a mission on Tainis based on Aleph Maskimah and Gevurah Geshamim Tchias Mason Brochas Lam Gimel Aman Aleph. We have Gevurah Geshamim, and that's juxtaposed to Tchias Mason. So we have many different shotim. The Nesivus writes it's the aspect of the hardness, the severity of the rains and the torrential downpours. That's Gevurah Geshamim. The Rishonim also have different explanations. Some Rishonim even say it highlights the control. Every raindrop goes to a specific place at a specific time. Everything has its own address where it's going. And then, of course, you have the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon writes in Chidusha Agur, in Brachas Tam and Gimel, from Adaris Liyah Parshas Zosa Bracha. Why is Gevurah Geshamim attached to Tchias HaMesim? Zok the Vilna Gaon, because you can have all the philosophers and the Chochmei HaTeva and the scientists of the world. But Acharei Kechlos HaKol, when all is said and done, you can have internets and you can have space shuttles and you can have billion-dollar satellites. The NASA just sent up a $10 billion satellite. Try and find, the origin of this. So $10 billion, over 10,000 workers, over 20 years. We should get $10 billion. And so we can have billion-dollar satellites scattered all. We can have international space stations. You can have people landing on the moon. You can have all this chachma. And you can have atom bombs and nuclear warfare. And yeah, what's up to Vilna Gaon with all the chachma and all the innovations and all the advanced technology? When all is said and done, you can't control the weather. That's just like Kuli Amamot. You can have cloning and you can have all these miracles, but what? We can't bring the dead back to life. Tchias HaMesim is going to be the greatest miracle history of the world. With all the technology, you can never bring a dead person back to life. What gets placed right alongside Tchias HaMesim? Gevurah Geshamim. Rain, the weather. Zok the Vilna Gaon, because you can't control the weather. We can't stop floods. We can't stop tragic tornadoes in Nebraska. We can't stop tornadoes, floods, tsunamis, you name it. The weather system, that belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the weather. We can't even accurately predict it. It's a pella. With all the science and chachma we have today, the average 3-day forecast is only right about 50% of the time. Even at 24 hours, one day, and we can't get it right, only about 75% of the time. Further you go away, it's amazing. All the technology, and we can't go ahead and even accurately predict the weather. And we mention all the time, Isaac Asimov in his book of facts, how Queen Elizabeth in 1953, our longest reigning monarch today, what happened? She gathered all the meteorologists, tell me the day it's never rained in the history of England. The nicest day when you scrutinize the annals of English history, the nicest day of the year is June 2nd. It's almost never rained historically on June 2nd. So 1953 gathered 100,000 people for the coronation, the inauguration of the Queen, outside June 2nd, 1953. And what happened? It rained. It rained. God said, why? What a shtuch. You think you're the queen. There only is one king, the Melech, Malchei, Malachim, the Phineas Daiti. You think, you're the queen. In the end of the day, it's all the Eibush. Gevurah Geshamim. Mela comes up Kodesh Baruch Hu and says, I gave you Dam, I gave you Tzvardei, I gave you all these makkahs, and they all affected what? They all affected one or two aspects of society, either human beings and cattle, or cattle on the ground. This is the first makkah, makes sense. Makkah number 7. 7 is the number of shleimus. Shleimus in the world of Teva. Comes the last makkah of Parshas Vayera, 7, and it brings an only day of Hashem. This is the first of the 7 makkahs that affects what? All aspects of society underneath the sun in the Olam HaTeva. All of them are going to be negatively affected. Dahainu what? Adam, Behema, Esim, Asada. They're all going to get affected. This is number 7. This is the Shleimus. This is Komage Fosai. Every aspect of society. Human beings, the cattle, the livestock, your Parnasa, your Avodim, your Kinyanim, as well as the ground, the fruits, the vegetables, but what? It's going to be with such control and precision. Azok to what? The Eibishter is showing what? Gevurah Geshamim. What's a Gevurah Geshamim? At the end of the day, the mitzvah, you could do your rain dances and you could do all your mishagas. As only one being, Hashem HaTzadik, V'ani V'ami Hashem. This is what? Koma Gefosai. The Gevurah of HaKushach. What's the idea of Gevurah? Gevurah is always Makusha and Midas Adin. What's Midas Adin? Writes the Gon is Perish Megillus Rus. Aleph, Din is Miloshan Dai. Shakai, Sha'amr Liolam Dai. Gemara Chagiga. And based on the world is in a spashate, is expanding endlessly. Eibishter says, Sha'amr Liolam Dai, stay right where you are. Din Loshan Dai, restriction, limitation. That's Yitzchak. Midas Hadin intertwined Ba'atzim with Midas HaGevurah. Ezo Giber, Mishnah Novus, Pardal Mishnah Halav, Ezo Giber, Kovesh Yitzro. What is Gevurah? I got the reins on it. I control my Yitzhara. It's not about destroying the Yitzhara. It's about Kedushin Laman Amad Beis, Barasi Yitzhar, Barasi LaTorah Tavlin, so often mistakenly and erroneously translated as the antidote. It's not the antidote. It's not about take the antidote, spring out and destroy your Yitzhara. It's about Tavlin is spices. What are spices? Spices are put into a dish to govern, to control what taste you want it to take. You want a little cinnamon, you want a little ginger, you add the Torah to the Yitzhara, and Paga B'cham and Nuvam Nachma Shkeil the Beis HaMedrash. Don't keep them outside, bring them into the but what? When you have the Koch HaTorah, you put the reins on the Yitzhara, you have the Kvishas HaYetzer, the Var, I control him and he doesn't control me. I decide which direction he's going to go in and when. I decide when to use Gaiva and Asis to Kedusha, Gaiva to Kedusha. You can take every trait and you can use it. Hein L'Tov, Hein L'Ra. That's the Koch HaTorah, that's the Tavlin, the control. That's Gevurah, that's Din, it's limitation. Mamela, what's Koma Gefosai? Phineas Daiti, the Eibishter says, you want to close Ve'era, you want to close the first series of the Samakas, the last three, that's going to be addressing their gods. That's when we're going to get, block out the rays of the sun. That's when we're going to get the sun god, the main god. We'll get the sun, we'll get Choshech, knock out their gods. Max Bechor is the heir to the throne, the successor to the Pharaoh over Egypt. That's Parshas Bo. Bo is, we're going to get their gods. You want to talk about everything down here underneath the suns, underneath the cosmos and the world of the Mazolos. That's what Adam, Behema, Esav Asada, we're going to get them all. That's Koma Gefosai, Al Adam, Al Behema, Val Esav Asada. But the Brisker Rav is telling us, well, look at the control. This isn't just a random hailstorm. The weather systems, it's just all over the place. But the Eibishter says, go into the house, and it's not going to go, you'll have the house to protect you. So anyone with any seichel, you don't need God to tell us this. If the Metzias, that itself is a shtickle riot of the Brisker Rav. If the Metzias is that the house is capable of protecting you, so anyone with a Bissel Chachma is just going to take all the stuff into the house, and he's going to pray to his God, and maybe after to the Jewish God, that his roof should hold up. Zok the Brisker Rav. The rain only went where there were people. That means if you were inside your house, there was no bara there. And Zok the Brisker Rav, even outside, that's part of the Ochirish, even outside, there wasn't a random bara. There was only hail fell where? On a person, on an animal, on Esav Asadeh. If you had anything outside that wasn't in one of those categories, pretty much everything is, but it only landed where there was an Adam, a Behem, on Esav Asadeh, Zok the Brisker Rav. And the house, it didn't fall on the house at all. Why? I send it everywhere. Blow the city out of the wall, out of the water, just destroy it all. And a massive tornado and a hailstorm, Teretz says, no. This highlights the Gevurah. What's the Gevurah? It's not random. I'm opening up the skies in a fierce fury of tornadoes and hailstorms. Look at the control. Look at the precision. What's it called? Maskirun Gevurah's Geshamim. What's the Gevurah? The Phineas Daiti. Not just the Gevurah of the power and the destructive capability. It's the Gevurah of what? Gevurah did. I control, die. I could say this is where this raindrop is going. This is where this hailstorm. Every single one's marked with a specific address. That's Gevurah Mamela. Highlighting that, since it's not random, in the end of the day, not everything is going to be destroyed. This is with pinpoint precision, and it's about one not destroying everything. It's about showing the Gevurah of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. I don't have to destroy everything. It's not a random thing. Hailstorm coming down. It's a hailstorm of Bechinas Gevurah's Geshamim, and that's placed alongside Tchias HaMesim, which only the Eibishter could do. So you could go ahead and release waters, and you could have a flood, but you can't control where it's going to go. A flood just going to Eibishter can control that the flood waters can hit everything, the hailstorm can hit everything, and it won't go exactly to this place. It's not just about destroying, it's about bringing them to an awareness of Hashem Atzadik, who's the one in control, who possesses the Gevurah. The Gevurah is not just that I'm unleashing my fury, Kaviyachol, and I'm wiping you out in one shot. I'm showing you with utmost precision the Gevurah of Geshamim and Geshamim Befrat that gets placed in a context Dafka alongside Tchias HaMesim, because the Gadlus Gevurah's Geshamim of Kol Magei Fosei is something that leads you to recognize the Eibishter is now Hashem Elokim, who controls every single hailstorm. This is where it goes, this is where it doesn't go, this is what gets destroyed, this is what doesn't get destroyed. That's Va'era, that's Hashem appearing to us. That's a whole new darga of Hashem HaTzadik. V'ani v'ami HaRishon. Have a wonderful night. Gevaldig Hashem Skaidish. Good.